I just want to welcome you to our class this week. We're going into religions, comparative religions, and this is our textbook. It's the 50th anniversary edition by Houston Smith of the World Religions. Our philosophy would be the 6th edition, which is Exploring Philosophy. They will be the books that we'll be using to base the class throughout the semester. So you can get a copy of those once you figure out if you want to stay or not. So, this is the introduction, actually, both of those courses, and where we're going to talk about worldviews. What is a worldview? All right. This is our definition we can start with. It's a commitment or a fundamental orientation of the heart that can be expressed as a story, and this is a very important word in all this, a set of presuppositions. All right. These are things that we hold about the basic constitution of our realities, and that provides the foundation on which we live and have our being. It is an interesting piece in how he does this. It's an orientation of the heart. All right? We're not talking about the thing that pumps in our chest. We're talking about the core of our being. The essence of who you are will be phrases that you'll hear pop up in all this. But where we're going out is not the peripheral things, but the underlying piece that you make choices from. What drives or how you react to fear. Decisions, choices, priorities. You get to go through all this. As you go through all this, you're going to start to see how we choose things to arrange our ideas or our beliefs. Why do we believe what we believe? Where did we get it from? Most people, we would argue from childhood, the belief that you would carry would come from the major influence in your life at that point, which most likely is parents. There are other external things. We talk about peer pressure. We talk about organizations that you're involved in. If you're involved in a church, a school, a sports team, drama club, any of these things become influences. And your worldview is going to begin to organize priorities and arrange them in your life. How do you go about using these? All right. It acts like a map. We could put out a flow chart if you want, a decision-making process. We could use ice cream. I'm hungry. What do I want? Well, if my daughter was here, she'd say, no sugar. All right. She'd go, look at the ingredients, kind of thing. Health becomes an issue. All of a sudden you get a heart condition. What do you got to start choosing? So all of a sudden you have this map that's being influenced by this case, health, and you're pushing up, in this case, which ice cream should I have? All right. Which one does my cardiologist most agree with? Well, probably vanilla, because it's vanilla. Right? If I say chocolate, well, that has issue. Well, not necessarily, because dark chocolate is heart healthy. Well, is that true? There's this map piece that starts to weave through this. Well, and we would do it more as a flow chart. When I'm standing there, and you realize what I'm doing is actually justifying the ice cream. What should I be getting? I should be bypassing the ice cream, cart over here and heading towards the fruit cart and past the tasty cakes as well. So we're putting in order values and priorities. And you realize there's a lot of these little words that start putting out what are values, what are the priorities. It's your worldview that is really beginning to orchestrate this piece coming together. Hopefully it would come together like an orchestra and it would sound in harmony, I guess if you would put it that way. What happens, if you ever go to the orchestra and when they're all warming up, what's it sound like? It's the best part, right? It's chaos. All right. And that's what happens if your worldview is out of sorts. You get to that next piece there. Our worldview functions as the eyeglasses, which is why I have the crazy little world up there with the glasses. All right. The right prescription enables you to see reality clearly. All right, so you go to the eye doctor. I always love when they put that thing over your eyes. What looks better, this or this? I'm about to throw up because you keep changing my vision. All right, and that's the problem. If the wrong prescription throws everything out of whack, it's out of focus, and it does have tremendous amounts of problems that come with that out of focus. Stumbling, nausea would be a big one there. When your vision isn't clear, there are consequences. There are outcomes. So your worldview has to be in tune. It has to be in focus. It has to be in the right order. So how do you go about doing that? All right. Katrina. Everybody remember Katrina? I could say Sandy and probably everybody, but I'm going to go to Katrina. The reason I use Katrina was it actually happened shortly after I started teaching. Well, a couple years after I started teaching. But we sent our daughter off to college in Louisiana, and she was there 1 week, and she caused the hurricane. So decisions had to be made. All right, it was coming at a very specific location. The colleges, when I use this for her, because I was aware of a lot of the decisions that were happening. We were watching it, and we weren't even there. She was working with the football team, so they had to make a choice. Do we stay here or do we go? They moved the entire team, I think, up to Oklahoma, to a camp up there. So there was warnings. All right, the news is putting things out. Okay, so you have a major event. Okay. And what I'm going to show you is two different videos, all right, about what happened. Who is the Savior? And it's taking in or projecting a world, but it leaves. Okay. So is it the truth that nobody? Because there's a line in there. Nobody cares. What worldview are you picking up on? What's the influence here? All right. Something that leads to despair. That's where you're going. Something that leads to despair. The video you'll see at one point, the kids are sitting with their mom. What did she save? Pictures. What are so important about pictures? Because they're not just any pictures. Those are old pictures. They're old pictures. It's it's where we came from. It's answering a question. Where did we come from? And we look back and you see at one point the kids are sitting there and she's pointing out, this is so-and-so. I just did it to you, but my computer was warming up. All right. Influences in your life. All right. My aunt was a major influence in my life. All right. So how does that play out when I make a choice? Because is her influence in my life scientific? Can you measure it? Now we could try, right? Is there an equation that goes into this? Not necessarily, but there is an explanation that comes there. Where did we come from? All right. Who got them on the roof? Dad did. All right. They just, at one point, you see where they're in the attic. They're sitting over here, and Dad's sitting over there, and he's got the radio. What's being played out? Because remember, somebody is creating this. This isn't real time. Somebody's creating an imagery, and they're trying to get you to understand something. Why is the dad sitting off over there, and they're all over here?
Well, he's listening probably for the emergency support.
He's listening to radio. Who's coming? What can I? And the thing is, what is it that I can do? Why isn't anybody else worrying about that? Why is mom not over there worrying about what can we do? She's over there doing what with the kids?
Taking care of the kids and trying to distract.
Right. It's playing out an idea here, right? What's the role of the father? Caretaker. What's the role of the mother?
Comforter.
Okay, caretaker. We could go provider, nurturer if you wanted to. There's a role being played out. Is that true anymore, or is that an archaic idea? It's interesting that they play it out. It does talk about the author of the video's upbringing. That's an issue, because in our current culture, that's not an issue. We'll use the phrase archaic. Okay. At one point, you'll see the one boy's sitting there, and a butterfly lands on his knee. And he points it at it, and he's talking to his sister, and they're both laughing. What's the point of the butterfly?
Hope.
Why is a butterfly hope? What is it about a butterfly? I mean, why didn't they make it a spider?
Spiders.
Scary! Now we're back to despair. We need hope. What's so important about a butterfly?
Well, they go through so much change. before they
Change.
get there.
It is introducing change. It's very important. The metamorphosis of, and it starts out here and it breaks out into something new. Okay? What religion fits this? To an extent, except for there's no one coming, there's no one but us. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps because nobody else cares. What's the religion?
Atheism?
No.
Naturalism.
It's not naturalism to an extent because you still are here. There's importance to you because there's something worth saving here, isn't there? If there was something not worth saving, it should just drown inside. Right? It's Buddhism. There you go. So it begins to play out a piece of the Buddhism tells you no one else is out there. You must save yourself. And you can see that being played out with the Father. Okay? They did show in the video live events from the actual events of despair. They did show there was one of a police officer trying to protect something, or was he trying to arrest something? See, I can interpret that both ways. The problem was with it, there was people over there, and he's got his gun drawn. So is he protecting, or is he harming? So and I could throw that image right up there, right? And we would all have a different reaction to it. A lot of times based on our own experience. Okay? They're up there. A snake comes out, gets up on the roof. What's the point of the snake?
That's the deceiver.
It is interesting. You could play the deceiver here.
Depends on how they frame it. It's potentially a threat, or it's showing that even the things that we consider a threat are also in the same situation.
All right. So is it trying to survive as well? And we're all in this together. Mom takes the photo album and beats the snake with it. We could say it's the ancestors saving them. But are we stretching it at that point? You could. All right. But what happens then is the little boy saves some of the pictures because now it is ruined. And then the dead body floats by. Another, middle of the night, a boat floats up with a couple people that they end up helping, But there is no imagery other than the butterfly of hope in this whole thing, because it ends up with this dead body floating by and the father holding the son because the son falls into the water. The dad jumps in, saves him. So who's the only person who's the savior? There's imagery there. Saves him out of the water, holds on to him. The son's laying, and they're singing away at the end. They said help was on the way. No one's coming. They said help was on the way. All right. So what do you take from what's the worldview here?
Well, there's no help coming.
There's no help coming. So who must save you? And you could realize is there really something to save? Is there a salvation that's being played out? Where are you going? And the father's the one that actually saves the son at the end. So he does play out his role of the protector. Or is that an archaic idea? Because it is sort of funny. The mom's the one who saves him from the snake. But when it simply came down to it at the end, it was the dad who saved the son from drowning. We can go on because I'm here. We could go off and really read all into it. And let me ask you this question here. Who has the rights to the interpretation?
The viewer?
The viewer or the author? And we could go. You have deconstructionism, which is going to argue that the interpretation lies with the viewer, me, because I'm viewing it, therefore I get to interpret it.
All my English classes said that.
Okay, that is a belief system. We call it deconstructed, and we see it in the idea of I get to deconstruct truth. I get to deconstruct history. We see some of that in the ideas of our current culture. All right, who interprets history? What interprets history? Is it facts? And what can we know about history? Because really, everything about history is faith. Were you at the Battle of Gettysburg? Since I've been looking at the Battle of Gettysburg and reading Grant's book. Were you at the battle? So what do we know about the Battle of Gettysburg? Okay. How do we know they're telling the truth? How do we know it even happened? Well, I get a live stream from Gettysburg every morning with a guy walking around going, we're going to talk about this place every day. How do I know he's even there? How do I know? How can I figure this out? Okay. There's a lot of things that go into it. And so interpretation is important. All right. We're going to attempt this one more time because I have another video for you. Okay, same event. Okay, I'm not going to play this one all the way through. Same event. All right, this one is made by a group of rescuing angels. All right, nurses, helicopter pilots. Big difference. All this right away. Two videos, the footage, the pictures, same event, same information. We got to remember that when we're all working from the same information, it's all the same. What's happening? Major difference here. One is an interpretation about the event produced. The other one is a record of what's actually happening. All right. Did somebody come?
Yeah.
Okay. And we see that. The helicopter is right in there. Biggest difference between the two videos right off the bat.
There's hope in the second one.
Based on what?
Based on all the emergency personnel who are there.
And I mean, I don't even I just close my eyes and listen. What am I hearing?
It's the music.
The music changed. All right. And it's calling all angels. Okay. There's a thing. You are seeing destruction. You are seeing despair. You are seeing hopelessness in the event that happened. Did people die? Yes. Were people rescued? Yes. Was there help? So which one's right? Did people lose their homes? Did people get lost? Were some people stranded? Okay. But then you go back in the beginning. This is the reason I used this one video. What was said first? There was a mandatory
evacuation the first time ever.
Okay. Get out. Why? So why didn't people go?
They didn't believe it was going to be that bad.
Okay, why not? Well, hasn't people died from hurricanes before? Am I invincible? Can I control the weather? Can I... See, there's questions that start come up. Here's where we go. Holding a worldview, you have to answer 4 very specific questions. All right? They have to do with origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. All right? What explains existence? Why are you here? Where'd you come from? All right. Is there a God? That's the big one that goes after this. And we're not talking about somebody's interpretation of the idea of God. We're talking about God itself. When we say God, what are we talking about? All right. It has to do with, is there something that created everything else? Is there something to which we are all a part of? What explains origin? That's the piece that goes into it. And then I say, when we get the idea of God, when I say God, what are we talking about? Well, it has to be something greater than us. Something eternal. All right. God is, and we could use the phrase, and we'll get to this as we go through some of the material. What explains God is absolute perfection. Okay, is that true though? Where do we get that idea? And that's one of the things we'll address. Reality. What is reality? Is it material? Is it immaterial? Okay? Tell me one thing which you use every day which is immaterial. How about logic? Ideas. They're immaterial. Or I asked you a question. You thought, is that an idea? Or what was going on in there? We could argue that it was just a bunch of atoms floating around your head. And they were crashing, so I stimulated something in you by asking a question which caused an electronic impulse. Is that true? What's the difference between a brain and a mind? If you die and I cut you open, will I find your mind? Does it exist then? See, there's that material, immaterial, meaning, objective purpose. All right, what value is there to human existence? We'll look at the easiest place that we can still talk about is some of this, the Holocaust. How did we get it to shift from a whole nation, a whole group of people, to extinguish another group of people? And they're not the only ones. We can go back and talk about origins in our own country. We could talk about Cambodia. We can talk about thought processes that came out of the French Revolution. Okay, objective purpose. Do you have a purpose? Why did you come here? Why did you go there? All these things are questions. What point does life have? Morality is a big one. It goes in here. What accounts for the human condition? One guy says, how can we be so fantastic in what we can create and do and such, and be so horrible to each other at the same time, almost? All right. Absolutes. Are there such things as absolutes? Ethics. Good and evil. All right. Is good and evil, are they opposing ideas, or is one necessary and the other one a lack of? Because you could argue that. We could do it with light and darkness. All right. Are they opposing ideas, or is darkness the absence of light, making it reliant on light? Okay. And the last one's destiny. Is there a better life or a salvation from this present state? Where are we going? Heaven, paradise, nirvana? Are we escaping this? Are we being saved out of this? What's our role in all of it? It becomes a big question. All right. So your worldview must answer those four things. All right. And when you have an answer, it needs to pass some tests. You can't. This is the thing. Is a lot of times I want to hold the view because I want to hold the view. Can you brute force your worldview? Well, as long as I yell louder than you, or we play King of the Hill and I just bulldoze over you, or I force this upon you. All right. Test the reason. All right. First test. Is your worldview, your answers within this, all right, is it logically consistent? Okay. The law of non-contradiction come in. We're going to look at that in a minute. Test of experience. Consistent with what we know about, here's the question, about what we know about our inside and about our outside, about our environment. Does my worldview work? Okay, and we can do this an easy one. Is it okay to steal? I believe I have a worldview that says everything is everybody's. Therefore, I can take whatever I want. Okay? How far does that work? So if I were to come in and take your phone, can I just take it? And you should, because everything is everybody's, right? You shouldn't get upset. Okay? What do we know about the outside world that says lying or stealing is a problem? Well, fights. Right? If I come and take your phone, you're just going to let me do that, right? If I can go out, take your keys, and drive away in your car, that's okay. Or do we know that there's a problem? A society where everybody can take where everybody wants. Is there a problem in that society? All right. I can live any way I want, right? I can choose to live where I think everybody can take whatever they want. But can a society work that way? And it is interesting that if we were to go after what we know is the last five of the 10 Commandments, they all have to do with interacting with each other. And we find them consistent in every culture. No murder, no stealing, no lying, no adultery. That's a big one. You'll find that. Adultery, what's the problem? It's a free society. Everybody should be happy, right? Therefore, everybody can sleep with whoever they want. All right? Take it out of the context of anything to do with anybody's religion or belief or whatever. What does adultery cause? Chaos. So societies will all look at it and go, you can't do that because if so-and-so is sleeping with so-and-so and so-and-so and we're supposed to do business together, what have we lost? And the problem with adultery is trust. There's no trust. So society can't move on. How about that inside thing? What do you know about guilt? Mom's favorite weapon against you. Guilt. You get that question. Are you coming home tonight? And it's all in how she says it. It's like, now if you don't, you're going to feel guilty. Where does the feeling of guilt come from? So if you get this thing. If I go to take something from somebody, all of a sudden there's that sense in you, well, you shouldn't do that. Where does that come from? Can I shut that voice down? The test of experience is actually practicing what it is. All right, and I can do it experimentally, and I can play mind games where it all works out, right? How about the test of practice would be the last one? Can you live out your worldview? I want to live out a worldview that says what? I want to take whatever I want. Or how about this? This is my favorite worldview. Ice cream is the best food for you. And the best way to eat ice cream is to be held within a pound cake with chocolate icing. So what if I live this worldview out? How long will I last? I'll be happy, right? Or will I?
Or until you have a heart attack.
Will I to be honest with you, will I remain happy? Just think about it. Every day's dessert, right? How long will it last? Because we get tired of it, right? It's like, the Christmas thing. The first day of turkey, the second day of turkey, the third day of turkey, and like the bones and whatever. Like, oh my God, I'm tired of the turkey, right? And the reason is pleasure is insatiable. If you're going to live a worldview that's geared toward pleasure, there's no happiness in it because you tire of it, and you have to, in order for you to, you got to ramp it up. Because, the first day was ice cream. Now you notice I added the cake and then I put it on whatever. And then I get tired out. And in order for you to get to that level of pleasure in there, I got to ramp it up again. Is that a worldview that I can live out over a period of time? That's a tough one. All right, 3 tests. You got to remember them. Test of reason, test of experience, test of practice. Building blocks. Your worldview has to stand on something. Which is why we begin it. We went back to the idea of God. And the idea of God is, we use words like this and eternal. What does eternal mean? No beginning, no end. Why does the idea of God have to be eternal? Why does it have to be something has no beginning and end, infinite? All right. Why do we get to the word perfection? You set out, you're a good student, right? You set out to write a paper, and you sit down, start writing. Right. And you get that one picture of the writer writing a book on here, writing a paper. When we used to actually use paper, right? Now it's just delete. How many balls of paper in the corner? What are you going after? What are you striving for? Why not just throw a few ideas out there and say it's a day? My favorite, if you watched certain movies, I really like The Patriot. Beginning of The Patriot, you see him out in the barn, and he's making a chair. and in the corner is a pile of chairs. All right, because he'll make it, whatever, and then he goes and sits in it, and he gets all comfortable, and it collapses. Okay, what's the pile of chair represent? What's he striving after? What's that?
Perfection. What's it better?
There's a difference between better and perfection, isn't there?
He's
All right.
searching for a functional chair.
Functional or perfect? I mean, which chair do you sit in at home?
The comfortable one.
All right, and if we could go, if you ever watched The Big Bang Theory, you can bring Sheldon into the picture, How many seats does he sit in before he finds the acoustics, the air vents, the thing, the view, the whatever? What's he looking for? The perfect spot. Is there such thing as a perfect spot? Where did we get the idea of perfection? And we could say that we have within our mind this idea of something, and we'll use your word better. All right. Do we ever achieve it? Perfection? Or you always go, it would be a little bit better if it did this. It's like the Christmas present. I want this thing all year long. You get in there, you told mom all the stuff you want to, whatever, and you finally get it, right? And you're playing what you're playing with, and you're like, well, if I only had, so was it the perfect gift? That's what you told mom 6 months ago. There's a quote I like to use. And I just forgot the guy's name who said it. Vince Lombardi, sorry. Perfection is unattainable. But if I pursue perfection, I will obtain excellence. Excellence is obtainable. We see it. 4.0. Excellent grades, right? Till you get into the academic and you do the extra classes, whatever, and all of a sudden you got a 5.0. It freaks me out. This is the idea of God in there, this thing to which underlies everything else. What holds everything else up? Okay? And we could say if I have a fundamental idea that is eternal, meaning it never changes, it's always there, then I know that what? Well, it's asked like a question like, do you go to bed at night worrying about the oxygen? Will the sun come up in the morning? Who's maintaining these things? Don't you want to make sure they're paid well and they don't go on strike? All right? Or do you have an idea of something that is eternal or consistent and unchanging that maintains them? Mother Nature, right? That is an explanation that comes in there. Mother Nature. All right? The idea of God underlies certain things. Your building blocks sit on stuff like, are we determined? Or is it free will? We are determined to an extent, or we are limited to a certain extent. When you go into Wawa and you want to purchase a drink, we could go back to ice cream, but we'll skip ice cream for a while. You are limited or determined, all right, by the stock. So whoever did the inventory is limiting you or determining you. Okay. But do you have to purchase what's there? What can you do? I can walk away. But you'll see people like, I don't want to walk away because I'm thirsty. So I am determined by my thirst. And so you buy whatever. So you are forced into it. Are you determined, or is there such thing as free will? And then you could ask, heaven and hell, the ideas of heaven and hell, the ideas of humanity, good and evil. All these rest on, all right, we could say the idea of God. All right, which brings into the study of religions. All right, what if I don't want to go after, I don't believe in God? My worldview begins with what? No God. God is dead and we've killed him. Okay? So, if we remove God, that becomes the question. Well, it doesn't exist. Right? So if nothing, the God doesn't exist, what does exist though? What do I know exists? It's my world around me. Well, that's something that depends on me, doesn't it? So what can I put there? and we get the idea of man. All right. What's the problem with sticking the idea of man here?
Man is fallible.
Okay. So I'm going to trust the thing to which got me in trouble in the first place. All right. The idea of man is there, and what is man? Well, I could look in the mirror and tell you what man is, right? And we could go down through anthropology now. We can go up to the study of man and cultures and whatever. See, what we're doing, a worldview is presenting a science, something to study here. All right. Societies have risen and fallen. Why have they risen and fallen? I remember watching an interview. It would have been in the early 90s, if I remember correctly, and it was a man presenting the resurgence of communism. And he was actually asked this question. He didn't want to have it called communism. He wanted it called socialism because it sounds nicer. Okay. And he was asked, because, you know, it was right after, I'm trying to remember the date, it was right after the Berlin Wall fell. And you had things changing throughout the Eastern Bloc. Everything's all opening up, right? So in the interview, he was asked by a reporter, what makes you think that this idea of socialism was going to work this time? And his answer was this: we're better people. Okay? The worldview, therefore, is holding that the idea of man is evolving. Okay? And we're becoming better. Why? Well, it has to go back to my origins. Where did we come from? You know, we could argue, let's see if I can find it. Let's see. That's the one. Liquid water is a necessary condition for life as we know it, but it is far from sufficient. There is an idea what water is necessary, right? We find it, or we could go to creationism, right? In the beginning, heaven and earth, God created heaven and earth, and what was there? Over the void and the seas. And, you know, Peter actually argues it later in that everything was created from this idea of water. All right. Liquid water is a necessary condition for life as we know it, but it is far from sufficient. Life still has to originate in the water, and the origin of life may have been a highly improbable occurrence. Darwinism evolution proceeds merely once life has originated. But how does life get started? The origin of life was the chemical event, or series of events, whereby the vital conditions for natural selection first came about. The major ingredient is heredity, either DNA or more probably something that copies like DNA, but less accurately, perhaps the related molecule RNA. Once the vital ingredient, some kind of genetic molecule, is in place, true Darwinian and natural selection can follow, and complex life emerges as the eventual consequence. But the spontaneous arising by chance of the first hereditary molecule strikes many as improbable. But as soon as I say it's improbable, it is also probable. It's possible. It is interesting that Chumasinger, who worked with Francis Coyle, if I remember correctly, he did the Geno Project, stated as an agnostic that the possibility of the proteins necessary for the human genome and such, the DNA and all that, to even be possible, the possibility of them organizing and coming together in this description was 1 in 10 to the 400th power. So there's a number there, right? What does that tell you? This is what he's going after. That it's possible. How many zeros? A lot. Okay. So but it's still probable. And that's all I need is probability. All right? Because you could get to this piece. Tell me what certainty is. And this is a problem, with a lot of us. It's like you'll get a religious person who's going to come after you. I am certain of what I believe. Okay? How certain are they? I had a young man who was in class, and I picked apart everything he said. All right? And I used this story before, but it was interesting. He sat in the back of the class. He came in late, he'd leave early and whatever, and we got to a certain religion, and he was arguing with me about the things, and I picked apart everything he said. It's much easier to be on the offensive than it is to be on the defensive. Okay? What was he getting mad at me about?
You were challenging his worldview.
I was challenging his worldview, which he was giving me back answers, and I was destroying his answers. Why was I so easily destroying his answers? That doesn't happen all the time. I get some, people who can give and take, and we can go quite distance. Because somebody's world, you're not going to change somebody's worldview. Most times, you're going to walk away and say, okay. All right, because it's something that is ingrained. We've talked about it. It's a core piece of your heart. Apparently, it wasn't with this young man. Why? Who had influenced him? And it was his mother, which is really came down to it. If I was right about anything I said, who was wrong? His mom. So why was he holding on to his beliefs? There was no scientific rationality to any of his beliefs.
If mom is wrong, then he has to question everything else in his life.
Even her love for him, right? Did she really love him? Well, I could go and take this one step further. Is it really his mom? Because here's the understanding. If it was his mom, wouldn't she have told him the truth? Because that's what moms do. So it's like all of a sudden I can throw you, none of what I ever said could actually be true, but I can throw you into chaos. Because you're building here on an idea that is not, to go back to what we said, it's not an infinite, it's a fallible, all right, to where the idea of God holds up infallibility. Remember, it's the idea of God holds the idea of infallibility. Okay? And when you have the idea of man and all these things resting on it, it throws all the rest of those into, like you could say, this is his mom, and this is all the ideas he's believing in or holding in. And when she fell, because of what I presented, all of his world fell. Truth is gone. Okay? We had a long discussion after that, and he was fine by the end of the semester. But I had actually done my goal in it, which was to knock out the cornerstone of his worldview in order for him to do what? Let's renovate. Okay? What do we know? Which is the study of epistemology. All right? Here's a phrase. I love this phrase. I just put it in here because I like saying it. Noetic structure. It's awesome. Listen to that. It's almost like a Christmas feel. Noel. It's noetic. It comes from the idea of the word nous. All right, and all it's doing is saying it's a sum total. The noetic structure is the sum total of everything you know. Okay, your worldview is a subset of your noetic structure, but in its priority, it sits way at the top. Okay, so if I say your noetic structure, how many people right now are thinking of yellow? I could even make it worse and make it sound philosophical. Who is thinking of yellowness? How about, who is the sum total of 6 minus 3? Who is trigger?
Horse.
Yeah, there's a random thing rolls around there, kind of thing. What did you eat 26 days ago? Okay. Okay, probably brownies or whatever. Okay, your noetic structure. There you go. Your noetic structure is a sum total of all the things you know, but everything you know is really not that important. And my wife and I laugh sometimes about, all this, stuff, that we know, insignificant facts about, whatever. Like, who knows who Trigger is? Name a dog. How's that one? And don't tell me my dog.
Not my dog.
Not my dog. But how about Rin Tin Tin? How about Lassie? How about name another horse?
Mr. Ed.
Mr. Ed. I love Mr. Ed. Oh, Wilbur. Your noetic structures is something. And all it's doing is throwing in the idea that there is information. You do know things. All right. Are they meaninglessness or are they important? Well, your worldview is important, especially if it's acting as the map of your decision-making process. All right. Presuppositions. What do we know? What we do know, all right, but we cannot prove. Tell me something you do know, but you cannot prove. The law of non-contradiction. Why you have to use it, and you do know this. All right, you live by it. We are living by it right now. There is a difference between a noun and a verb, right? There is a difference between adjectives, adverbs. Now all of a sudden, I want to sing that song we all watched as a child. You know, most of my students don't even know about any of that. All right, how do we know there's a difference between a noun and a verb? All right, your language itself relies heavily on the law of non-contradiction. Otherwise, there's no such thing as communication. All right, I said yellow. You all knew what I was talking about. How about if I tell you yellow is the new green? I did this once when my grandson was going to kindergarten. I was trying to get him to believe that yellow was green. He would be the first kid to fail kindergarten. No! Grampy said it's... Right? What's wrong with that? Why can't yellow be green? I like it better that way.
It can be if you're colorblind.
Hey, colorblind can be whatever you want, right? It doesn't matter.
No,
but it does come to a...
different way. The yellow could be green for one colorblind person. It can be brown for another.
Sure it is. That's wonderful until I'm coming to a red light.
Yes.
All right? And now I'm colorblind. I don't know what to do.
That's why.
And if yellow is the new green, right? What can I do?
That's gonna end well.
That's why I race through all the yellow lights. Right? It's okay. Because when the cop stops me, right, I can tell him yellow is green. And I won't get a ticket. See, remember we go back to this idea. It's like, I can believe whatever I want, but can I live it out? The test of experience comes into play. And there are consequences to me running. What if I said green is the new red? Will I make it even through the intersection? Or will all of a sudden my whole life be remembered by the bear wrapped to the telephone pole on the side of the road? Okay. Presuppositions are what we know, but we cannot prove. And the reason that we know the law of contradiction is, but we can't prove it, is in order to prove it, we would have to use it, which is just vicious cycle of me arguing with myself, probably. All right. It's what we accept by faith. All right. What else do we know, but we cannot prove? Tell me what gravity is.
The force holding us to the planet.
It's an equation, actually. Okay. But, okay, here we go. I know. Can I prove it, though? Oh, I could.
See the effects.
I can see the effects of it, but I cannot tell you what it actually is. All right? Now, if I sit here and go, I drop my glasses. I'm not going to keep doing this because then I have to bend over and pick them up. But if I get to this point here, right, and I go, I'm going to drop them again. And gravity turns around and goes, if you drop them one more time, I am not taking them to the ground. I'm tired of this game. Can gravity do that? Why not? Gravity is a child of Mother Nature. Mother Nature can do all these wonderful things and throw snowballs at us and do whatever. Gravity should be able, is a child of her, therefore it should be able to say, I'm tired of playing this game. What can gravity not do? Tell me what love is. Prove to me that your mother loves you. Now, she's not here, so I can pick on you. Does your mom love you?
Yes.
How do you know?
I'm living at her house.
So we would call that graciousness, sacrifice. Because usually when the kids leave, we change the locks. Or we move. Multiple times, apparently. And they follow us. Tell me what love is. What's the definition of love? And you think, as soon as I say what love is, and I ask you how do your mom or whatever, what's going to come up is the same thing with gravity. Examples. Like dropping, there's examples of it, but I cannot tell you what it is. It's presupposed. It's built in. It's innate. It's built in. It's a priori, meaning existence before I even know it's there. When did you first learn about gravity? Probably when you were learning to walk, right? And you kept tumbling, or you dropped something, whatever. I mean, you didn't even pay any attention to it. When did you even become, oh, that's gravity? You don't. All right. Things that are presupposed, meaning they're built in. There are things to which, and we'll look at them as we go through. A lot of things will pop up. Logic is presupposed, which is why you see the law of non-contradiction in this idea. We get to this stuff called inductive and deductive reasoning. What's the difference? In deductive reasoning, I will take something to which I want to prove and then try to prove it. Okay? Take something to which I believe is true and I'm going to live by it and then prove it that way. I'll deduct from, I'll reduce ideas. I actually, I can explain inductive reasoning actually much easier. We've all played the games or gone and watched CSI. We watch Clue. Inductive reasoning is we start with a hypothesis. All right. It sounds scientific all of a sudden. All right. I start with a hypothesis. Clue. Professor Plum
did it in the library with the candlestick.
There you go. That's a theory, right? But as soon as Miss Scarlett says, no, I was with Professor Plum in the kitchen having tomato sandwiches, could it have been, okay? So that throws that theory out, right? But what I'm doing is eliminating ideas, which I always want to say these two should be different from their titles. But this way I'm working from a hypothesis and I'm constantly, I could use a really cool word here, evolving my beliefs based on what? Well, truths. The eyewitness account of Miss Scarlett. All right? Well, maybe he paid her off with an extra tomato on her sandwich or something. All right? Which we start to go in there. And what's starting to happen is we have to play out the clues. All right? The things to which we could say are presupposed. Okay? Can you change history? Something happened 20 seconds ago. My computer blew up. What can we do about it? Can we go back in time?
Edit it out.
We edit it out. Okay? But that doesn't change the fact that it happened. Okay? Can I change history? Well, we go back to reductionism or deconstructivism, where I can reinterpret history based on what I want to happen. Because where do I get that idea from? There are some other ideas that start to play themselves in. We'll get into a couple more in a minute. Non-theoretical, I just love saying this one too. Non-theoretical foundations of theoretical thought. What does that mean? Sounds like Immanuel Kant. He's great at making up words. All right. Non-theoretical foundations of theoretical thought. All right, let's go back to it. What is one? Love. Tell me or explain to me scientifically the love of a mother for a child. Why is mom letting you stay in the house? Because she got her little pad out and she deduced, right, all the possibilities, and she came up with a better or a worse. We actually do this as parents. Should we move or should we not? And we come up with a list, pros and cons. All right, is that love? What does love say? If you show, all of a sudden, mom, who's defending? It's like you watch these. Who's the last person to defend the murderer or the rapist or the... Why? They'll even know that they're wrong. Right? If we've watched this, I could do it with my dad when he had to believe certain things about my older sibling. He struggled with all that. All right. Why does he not want to believe what was being said about him? Because it's his child. And we want to believe that they're, or do we just love them? Tell me what love is. That's a question that sort of rolls all the way through here. What is love? Okay. The last one here, belief forming mechanisms. This one's easy, right? This is just cause and effect. It's really all it is. If I clap my hands, okay, what happened? What do you believe about me clap? When you heard the noise, right? What did you hear?
Your air molecules bouncing off the wall.
What caused it? Please tell me you think my hands caused it.
Force your hands coming together and force the air out.
What is cause? And really, it's an explanation, cause. All right, is cause built in? Is it something that happened after me? Post, or I can't even say the word right. I could say posthumously, but that wouldn't make sense. There you go. Cause. My hands are the mechanism, right? Or is cause the mechanism? We could ask this one. What caused me to clap my hands? Is that just the mindless causation in my head? Belief forming mechanisms. There's a bunch of them. You'll see when we get to Kant. He runs through categories of things to which have impact or influences. All right, are they innate? Are they built in? All right, cause is the biggest one we talk about. All right, the law of non-contradiction. All right, Aristotle's principle of non-contradiction occurs in the Metaphysics 4. This is easy. A cannot be both what? Well, we can do it with B here since it's in here. B cannot be B and non-B at the same time in the same place in the same essence. All right. B cannot be both. Well, let's do it. A chair. The chair cannot be both the chair and a person at the same time. Why not? How about the chair can both exist and not exist at the same time in the same place and in the same essence? How about this one? Green cannot be both green and non-green. We did this one already. All right. You cannot both be here and not be here at the same time in the same manner, in the same existence, blah, 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 on. All right. The law of non-contradiction. Okay. The example they get in here, this is you can play on words. This is where linguistics is in. Context would be huge here, right? If I'm talking about a picture holding something. Do you know what I'm talking about yet? Yeah. A picture, all right, it is not possible for someone to be a pitcher and not a pitcher, where a pitcher is first, the instance refers to a baseball player, and in the second to a jug holding a water. See, both pitchers can hold something. All right. But as soon as I say he's the pitcher, do you think of something pouring water? All right, so this is where language becomes huge into this discussion. When I said that a verb cannot be both a verb and a non-verb at the same time. All right, in order for us to have a communication, for linguistics to even be possible, we need differences. And we need to all be able to understand the differences. So we need a standard. What's the standard for all language?
Consensus.
What's that?
Consensus.
A consensus on what?
Consensus that what I transmit to you is a reasonable facsimile of what you interpret that transmission to be.
And what's the standard by which we determine that by? We could sing the song if you want. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? It's the alphabet. How important is the standard alphabet?
It's all Greek to me.
It's all Greek to me. But see, when did the actual original alphabet, which they call the, was it the post-Sinai? No. Pre-Sinai. Pre-Sinai alphabet is actually what they call it. It's very important, actually, when it comes to Judaism. All right? Did Moses write the Torah? The only way that's possible is if there was an alphabet. All right? And it had to be available when he was writing. Is there such thing? Because if you go backwards and you look into ancient Egypt, hieroglyphics. And the only person that knew anything of, it was like the upper elite knew the hieroglyphics. And there were multiple, thousands and thousands of hieroglyphics. You can go back and look at them all. So where did the alphabet come from? And was it available? It's a very important argument, because if Moses did not write the Torah, what falls apart?
Islam and Christianity.
And?
Islam.
And?
History.
And? How about our Declaration of Independence, which is based on a Judeo-Christian principle? All right. So there's a lot, in this. The idea of the alphabet is very important. Language is important, and it's wrapped into this idea of the law of non-contradiction. You'll see two logics appear in all this. Eastern logic and Western logic will be what they're similarly. Then now we go, there's two categories. Oh, that's the law of non-contradiction, right? The Eastern logic is going to tell you something can be both here and there at the same time, and also. All right, what disproves that? Because it's an easy one to hold in your belief system. But can you practice it in the test of experience? And I remember one guy is saying that it's easy to go out in the middle of the road and test it out. Can it be you and the car, or you or the car? Can you and the car take up the same spot at the same time, or are you going to suffer something? Which would be the proof that it's not and also, but either or this or that. All right. So why does we have masses of people hold on to one principle, that Eastern logic can be this and that? Okay. That's a big question that comes in, and we'll actually look at it quite a bit. These are just different laws of thought. The law of identity, when it all wraps around the idea of the orange. If A, then A. If something is an orange, then it's always an orange. All right. When is an orange not an orange? When is it tangerine? How do you know the difference? Well, categories. We have categories. I guess the other one is just the excluded middle. You'll see that pop up eventually. Everything is either an orange or not an orange. It's excluding this piece here. All right. There's no middle ground to all that. Sorry. The reason I threw this in here is this. All right. You would know it from the Renaissance, 1800s. All right. Prior to that, 1600s, you would have had the Reformation, driven by Martin Luther. There's others. We wrap it around there because his goal in all of that wasn't to destroy the church. It was to bring the church back into order. All right, from chaos. All right. But what you see in there was no question in all of that about who God was, fundamental principles, things that were taken for granted at that point. When you get to the 17th, 18th century, we had a change in thought. All right. And you see it, and this describes steps. You're shifting from reason to the arts, to the music. We played the videos earlier. All right. Because the arts and the music are major influences on what we think and what we should feel and how we should respond. We saw it in the two. One was pushing the idea that nobody's out there to help you. The government hates you. The man, whoever that is out to destroy you. All right, rise up. All right, be your own man, destroy everything else, hate everybody else. We could go off onto it, because really once you throw man in there, it can become whatever you want it to be until it clashes with your neighbor who's got the same rise up and hold on, because everybody's free to hold on to whatever they want. All right, you'll see this. It shifts from these into areas of culture and theology. Okay, we do this. When you see an idea being presented in the academia, you know it's an idea that's been festering around for, it doesn't just appear. It's one that's been being bounced around. When we talk about your textbooks, all right, are prejudiced by the author. and by the intent and such. And you'll see that. You go in there, you can tell what the influence is. And it comes from their environment, comes from their background, how they were raised, what they're mad about, what they don't like, what they want to dismiss. Sometimes you can tell more about somebody by what they leave out than what they actually say. Okay? And you see this idea of rising, and we call it the Enlightenment. Man all of a sudden became aware of what he was capable of doing. All right? Amazing things happened in the Enlightenment. You could go off on, I've listed some of them, but the cause of the Enlightenment would have played out here. If I'm trying to get a history right, the fall of Constantinople. Okay, you had this huge shift from this area, Middle East, whatever. Islam had shifted, the Constantinople fall, and all of the intelligence. All right, culture and art shifted all over into here. Italy, Florence, Rome, Naples, all became cultural centers. You had a shift up of the intelligentsia into Germany. All right, where it became centers of different areas of thought. You had the rise up the Gutenberg, the printing press was a major influence because you could go from stuff being very limited in availability for anybody to read to things becoming very common and available to read. All right. Here's one: the rise of positivism. Positivism means, well, it really simply comes down to this. What is the guy's name? I can never remember his name. I'll remember at some point. Oh, David Abelard. He wasn't the one who promoted it, but he promoted it. It wasn't the one who came up with it. But you saw this promoted or pushed a lot. Don't believe anything that cannot be proved scientifically. Do not believe, it's positivism. Do not believe anything that cannot be proven scientifically. Okay, what's the problem with the statement?
Seems the world is limited to rational examination.
Okay. What's the real problem with the statement?
Leaves out everything you cannot immediately observe.
Okay, including?
Love, God.
No.
Immaterial.
And it's leaving out its own statement. It's self-defeating because its statement itself is not scientific. It's philosophical. Okay? And that's the piece you have to come at. You just look at, what does it stand on? That goes back to that imagery of the foundational piece. Is it sitting on a solid, and we'll use the phrase, and everybody think it's, Christianity all of a sudden, a solid rock? Or are you on sinking sand? All right. Western man begins to think in terms of mutual exclusive truths. This is, we know this one really. It's my truth is my truth, and your truth is your truth. You can agree on this. You can think whatever you want, and I can think whatever, and we can all get along. Is that possible? Okay. As long as you stay in your house and I stay in my house, we'll be okay. And well, that's not living though either. All right. Objective reality is completely undermined and nothing is true. The result of this thinking is that man begins to despair of his condition and we've lost ultimate truth. And confusion sets in. Fear sets in. We don't know what's what. We don't know what's true. We don't know when we're being lied to. We don't know. We just don't know. Okay? But if there is a absolute... we could say this, there is no absolute truth. What's wrong with the statement? It's an absolute statement. All right. So it's self-defeating. So we're getting into this area where things are falling apart all over the place. All right. Why? Because there's no cornerstone. There's nothing to hold everything up. All right. When the house is tumbling, when we need something, we could go back to the original visit in the hurricane. That in the video, there was something to hold on to. What was it? The house was still standing. So there was something material that was helping them. All right. How many times do you check the foundation of your house? Do you do an inspection every morning? You know, I remember it was a couple of years ago now in Philly. All of a sudden, it was like, you know, this house they showed on the news. I don't know how they had the video of it. All of a sudden, it just disappeared. So was it instantaneous, or was that happening over a period of time? Well, the event, the crumbling, was, we could say, was instantaneous. But the corruption of the foundation, which is what they said was the cause, was happening over a series or a period of time. All right, and that's the argument that's starting to play out when we get rid of the law of non-contradiction and we start to say your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. We're undermining things that will play out over time and begin to crumble. And then that's why we get to this piece. There's a fear that comes with that. Can two people hold two opposing arguments and get along? We could get along until when? When it comes in conflict. So, all right, I hold the argument that chocolate cake is the best thing. Somebody else I know holds the argument that brownies are the best thing.
That's right.
Someone holds the argument that it's all vanilla, and somebody else holds when will we become in conflict?
When it's time to pick dessert.
When it's time to pick dessert. But what do? We go to and we get Breyer's vanilla and chocolate. We solve the problem, right? It's not, and this goes back to the idea of the noetic structure. It's not that important. Okay. How about, let's just jump on the bottom one. Man is the meaning of all things. God is the meaning of all things. When will we come into conflict?
When man tries to play God.
Okay. In where? When will we come in that? Well, if there's a lot of people running around that hold those two different things. We don't see them arguing. I ask you a very specific question. And I ask it to rile everybody up. All right. Is rape always wrong? Is there anybody that believes that rape is not always wrong? And the answer to that is yes. The rapist. All right. He has to believe, or they have to believe what? That it's okay to rob others of dignity. We'll just leave it on that part. Okay. So where do we get to that belief? Well, it's the undermining here. You know, when you begin to see where moral issues start to play itself out. All right, we saw that in those building blocks. Moral issues become a big deal. Purpose and meaning. What is there value to human life? Well, you're going to hold the position that there's value to your life, but is there value to another person's life? Well, we could argue that you answered the question, your mom let you live in your house. So therefore, there must be value in your life as well. Will she let anybody live in her house? So there must not be value in... And we did this. We could do this with the Holocaust, Nazi Germany. Over a period of time, it was moved that certain groups of people, all right, were not of any value. Okay. How did that happen? Well, you start with different things that become dehumanizing. And it happens over periods of time to where you could have someone like Eichmann in his trial going, well, I don't understand why you're so upset with me. I was only removing the rubbish. What did he believe? What gives value to life? Well, we could argue that from the idea of the survival of the fittest. Dawkins argues that the cause of all things, life itself, if we're running out of time or I'd read it to you, is the selfish gene. You're here because of the selfish gene. As soon as he uses the word selfish, what is he telling you? The gene can choose. The gene has rational thought. It creates. There's an argument out in science today that gravity is the source of all things. It is what causes everything else. What can gravity not do? Well, you saw it in the explanation when Darwinism comes into it. We evolved from this All right, and you realize that in that argument, he's arguing against design, but he's presenting an argument of very important conditions that have to be met in order for life. All right, can you hold those? Is that holding two conflicting worldviews? And how do we justify it? Well, language. How important is language in it? And explanations. And what you begin to rise up here is different worldviews. We've seen them held throughout history about what's important and what's not important. Or I could actually change those words and ask you what is essential and what is not essential. Okay? And then based on that, we can determine who's valuable and who's not valuable. Okay, that's a worldview, and you realize how subtle those become. You should recognize the words. All right, is it a subtle thing, and am I really demeaning you? Okay, with no ultimate truth, we can go down any one of those lanes. All right, the law of non-contradiction enters into here, where if you want to go through the theistic argument here, you have a creator and a created. They're two classifications. All right, they're separate. Why? How do I know the difference between a creator and a created? Artwork. You drew a lovely sketch. Okay, can you tell and it's the sketches of you? You did self-portrait. Which one's you? Are you the created image, or are you the creator of the image? And how do you know the difference?
Well, it doesn't quite look exactly like me.
Okay. But maybe it's the real and you're not.
I came first.
How do you know that? Time would be the answer. When did one come into play as opposed to the other? Who was first, chicken or the egg? That becomes a very important aspect of origin. Which did come first, the chicken or the egg? All right. Well, it would be easier to explain evolution from the egg being first. Because the evolution theory would have to include, if I look backwards, reductionism from the chicken, you would have to go through the egg to the simple-celled piece that was your origin. So the egg came first. But if I come from creationism, the chicken came first. And from that, we know things are here because of reproduction. All right. All we can play with in here is the difference between the artist and the art. All right. We could throw in dimensions here. What's the difference between you and the artwork?
I'm three-dimensional.
What are the three dimensions?
Height, width, and depth.
So you have height, width, and depth. Or we could use volume if you want. All right, you have height, width, and, all right, what does the art have?
Height and width.
Okay. Well, what if it's a cube? What if you drew on the chair? Now there's no difference between you and the artwork, right? What is the other thing that makes you different than, we could use a really cool word like animation. You're animated, the chair, the art is not. Unless you can make it digital, and now it can bounce all around, whatever. And we could have Mickey Mouse on my 1,000 pieces of paper, and I can make them move. Do I need thousands of pieces of paper to make you move? What's the difference between you and the art when you're animated? Because I could say, you're animated, and my car is animated. My car moves. What's the difference between you and my car? It has a brain. You have a brain.
I'm living.
How do you know something that's actually we're running through categories here. Category of living and non-living. The artwork, we'll just go back to art and creator and artist. The artwork is not, and you did point this out, non-living. How do you know it's non-living?
It's a piece of paper.
We're running the test of experience here. All right, it's a piece of paper. What does paper not do? And we could throw another word in here and not use thinking and all that stuff. It doesn't change. All right? Categories of living and non-living. All right? What makes you different, there are other living things. I could say, What makes you different from the tree? The tree is living. You are living, you're the tree. How do we know the tree is living? And we could do that. You could act like a tree, we could tape leaves to you, and we could say you're a tree and think you're in the 3rd grade play now, right? I played the tree. All right? How do we know a tree is living?
It grows.
It grows. It changes. The category of change comes in here. What causes it? Well, we could say it's what? Organic. There's a category. All right. There's tons of things that roll in here, right? And we're playing this idea out. This is a representation of Plato's allegory of the cave. All right. You got your prisoners chained in a way to which all they can see is the shadows. All right. They're seeing shadows which are coming from types or forms, but they're not living forms. All right. This is a horse. He sees the shadow of the horse, which is less distinguishable than the statue or the artwork. But this isn't living. That's not living. All right. What's he moving you to? All right. Knowledge is represented by the light. The artificial light is casting the shadow from these types of things. How many dimensions here? We have a shadow, we have a form, and we have a... Tell me a real horse. Now we can go back to Trigger. All right. Is Trigger the perfect horse? All right. In this piece, one of the prisoners break out, what you see them here. They escape from here and they get outside the cave. Okay. Because inside the cave is a representation. What are they imprisoned by? What they're imprisoned by is their senses. All right. When they get outside, they're now in reality, right? Because this is not reality, especially shadows. Okay. We get out, and you have artificial light. We get outside. Everything is known by what? The ultimate light. Now you remember, Plato is a naturalist. He's bound up in his own worldview, which is naturalism, right? So he's limited. He can only go so far here, right? What's the sun represent? He calls it something. All right. This is the idea, the world of ideas is what he's after. All right. In the world of ideas, you have things you know by your senses, all right, which you can know by the shadows. And what can those shadows be? And we've done this. Look at the cloud. What is it? Oh, I see. It can be anything. All right. But the form to which is causing the shadow, cast by an artificial light, is a representation of the horse. But it's not the perfect horse. Where is the perfect horse?
You're still waiting for it.
Why? Where does it exist? This was Plato's argument. It exists in the mind.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so we just jumped from material to immaterial to ideas. But he can only go that far because he's a naturalist. He does call the sun the form of the good, meaning it contains, because you can answer this as a naturalist, what exists without the sun? Take the sun out of our whole equation, and what exists? Nothing. So he is arguing the argument of the one. Without the form of the good, nothing else exists. All right. So there's your fundamental piece, but he's going to argue that it exists in the mind. All right, the mind of man. So man is the form of all things. Man is the center of all things. Man, everything exists because of man. Okay. That's Plato's allegory to cave, and he's running categories, or what he calls forms. The idea of forms of something. And we could do it with the chair. We played it earlier. Where is the perfect chair? It's in the mind of the creator. All right, we can go back to that original image I gave you with Mel Gibson trying to make a chair, and he's got this pile over here because he's pursuing perfection. Okay. They go through these really quick, but we know these things. All right, we can go right to biology class. All right, and do all our sciences. Levels of class. We have kingdoms, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. All right, the classes of being or existence. All right, we see them played out. We have, the kingdom of Amelia, planted fungus, I can't even say all. That's one thing I hate about this teaching, too many names. But we can understand them this way, classifications of humans. We're in the Amelia kingdom, Credota, Mammalia. I feel like I've been Italian now. Primates, Homo species, Homo sapiens. We have classifications. All right. What does that represent? The law of non-contradiction. You can't be this and that. I can't be a mammal and a reptile at the same time in the same place. How do I know I'm not a reptile? We know there's differences in it. Okay. 3 main worldviews. Naturalism, pantheism, theism. All right. And this is the rule. It must be coherent in its answers. One cannot contradict the other. All right. When I'm in this worldview, I need to have coherent answers. And those answers had to do with origin, morality, purpose, destiny. Okay. Naturalism. All that exists is caused by something within the cycle of life. Which now, what movie do we want to watch? Lion King. All right, and they explained it in there, right? It was actually an explanation. You go to Disney World, they got the whole explanation for you. They got the tree. All right. All that exists is a product of the mindless, unguided natural processes. What guides this cycle? All right. If man is everything, if there is no supernatural, therefore what? What guides it? Well, something you realize as soon as we make the statement, it's unguided natural process. We are assuming that it's a system and that it functions. We are recognizing something there, but what we're going to say is it just does what it's supposed to do because it is. It just is. Which religion fits in that? It would be Buddhism. It just is. Live in the moment. That would be the phrase. Pantheism. The view of the world that is either identical to God or an expression of God's nature. It comes from the pan, meaning all, and the theism, which means belief in God. So according to pantheism, God is everything and everything is God. All right. Hinduism would be your example here, right? We are all escaping. Once we realize that we are a product of our own imagination, we escape from the false lie or the false sense of existence into the universal. God is unknowable. It's an unknowable entity what we would call the universal. Why do we use the word universal? What are we trying to get to without saying? It's the idea of God. It's universal, meaning it's all inclusive. That's like saying it's eternal without saying it's eternal. All right. It needs explanation. And to be honest, when we get into Hinduism, there are no gods. There is nothing that is truly Krishna. These are explanations of existence. All right. And the explanation is there to get you to realize you don't exist, and which allows you to escape into the universal. Explanation is found in the reduction to the simplest form and seen in the cycles and stages. And when we get in there, you'll see it, where we'll see how each stage is an explanation of something. As a child, you do this. As a teenager, you do that. As an adult, you do this. What is your responsibility when you get to the point where you no longer contribute to society? Your responsibility is to remove yourself from society so as no longer to be a burden. What does that say about the value of life? Well, you're in a worldview that you cannot argue, all right, all men are created equal. It can't be argued here. It is interesting, and we see this in our current culture. The only place, the only society, the only culture where you can argue that slavery is wrong is in the society built on the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution. We the people. Why? Because it's the only one that gives value to life. No other worldview does that. Okay? So that's why it can be argued here. You don't see it being argued anywhere else in the country. we see it being a need to escape from, but the purpose of there is not because life holds value, it's about survival. That's why in Dawkins' argument of the selfish gene is built on the idea of survival of the fittest. It's not about value, it's not about purpose, it's about survival. What survives? The strongest thing. Why are we here? Because the gene was more selfish than anything else. It's selfish. That's why he uses the word selfish. Theism, all that exists is created, is caused by something outside the circle of life. We have a circle, and what it's beginning to recognize, and you saw it in pantheism, is recognizing, but it's saying it's nothing. All right? As soon as you say that there is an outside source, we'll do it the artist. The art is a reflection of the artist. We could say that the art is created in the nature and character of the artist. All right? As soon as you say something is a creator, you're bringing in another idea that it's a rational being. All right? Why? Creating is a choice. It has to be able to reason why something should be something, and therefore it gives it purpose. All right? All that exists is created by something greater than itself. It's caused by something outside the circle of life, and what we call it is a first cause, or a necessary being. All right? Metaphysics, morality, and epistemology in this context, these are important. They rely on something. All right, metaphysics needs the existence of God. Why? Well, look at it, and this is where the design argument comes in. Complexity, purpose, morality, and these things play out. We need something that is big enough, powerful enough, wise enough, and willing enough to create, and here's the key word, maintain the universe we live in. Are you worried about the oxygen? Because if the oxygen increased by 1/1000%, what happens? We catch on fire. If it changes down, what happens? We suffocate. So who's maintaining it? The distance of the sun from the earth, who's maintaining it? Is it? And can you say it? Say, here's the problem. Is it a mindless process? Because here's the problem. I'll give you the other. This is where the mindless process really bothers me. If it's a mindless process, how do I trust it? If your worldview is built on this mindless process, can you trust it? If everything is random, are you going to sleep tonight? Because if everything is random, it means what? The sun doesn't have to come up tomorrow. The only reason you believe it came up tomorrow is because it came up yesterday. But that's stupid on your part, right? You should be out there making sure it comes up. Or who cares? Because you don't really exist anyway. Your worry about all these things in existence is because you still believe you are important. Once you understand you're not important, you are free. What's the problem with that statement? The use of the word you. It's a contradiction. I cannot be existence and non-existence at the same time. Oh, well, that's because I can be, and also I can be non-existent and existent at the same time. So it's a matter of the worldview, but does that change what is true? Okay. Moral necessity of God is found within the philosophical need to account for why man is both cruel and wonderful at the same time. What explains morality? Why do we hurt each other? Or here's the big one. There's like every country song in the world will come in. Why do we hurt the ones we love? What explains that? You know, is there an author of what is right and wrong? All right. If it's man, here's the thing. Can man be the author of morality? Is morality a social construct? Well, here's the thing. What man who is in charge of creating morality makes rules up that limits himself? If you're in charge of morality, what rules are you making up? Whatever holds everybody else down and frees you, allows you to live autonomously. The idea of autonomy. Morality is against your autonomy. Therefore, we must remove it. All right? Nietzsche jumps into this thing. Okay? Problem of evil. This one's easy. Well, tell me what the problem of evil is. I can wrap it in one sentence. You're not going to like it. It is the inordinate use of your free will. Evil, all right, is what? It's a result of your choices. Evil itself isn't lingering out there. And we want to put, as soon as I say evil, what are you thinking? You got a little red guy, little horns. If you're old enough, you can think of Flip Wilson. The problem is the inordinate use. It result inordinately using your free will as opposed. Well, let's go back to it. Tell me what the purpose of free will is. Why do we have it? You realize if God has given us free will, if you believe in a God that gives free will, isn't he taking a tremendous risk? Because I could put it to you this way. What parent brings into existence, reproduces something that will come in and hate them? That's stupid. There's a good argument for what? Well, not having kids, or a good argument for getting rid of them all. All right? Why? Free will. What's its purpose? Why allow it? And I could make a really good argument. The purpose of free will is to allow for love. Without free will, there is no love. All right? That's something we'll argue as we go. This is real quick. Especially now, the necessity of God's existence addresses our ability to know what is ultimately real. What is reality? We can get in here. What explains love? Where do ideas come from? We already touched on some of those. But are these better explained in a worldview with a creator or with a worldview without a creator? All right. It is interesting that when we get into Hinduism introduces a creator, but not as a reality, only as an explanation. All right. It's trying to walk a very fine line. Okay. We'll talk about that. Last thing. This was written in 1991. It was published in the Dallas Ledger. Okay. And here's the question that is being posed. All right, we need a noble lie in order to wench us into something. All right, and this is what it begins to argue. All right, I know you can't read it, so I'll read it to you. Religious philosopher Loyal D. Ruse says, modern culture urgently needs a noble lie, a myth that links the moral teachings of religion with the scientific facts of life. So what we need is something that brings morality and science together. Okay? How do we do it? And his argument is this. All right? Here's the question. He says, science has eroded the plausibility of the Judeo-Christian myths. It has got into our heads and consciousness in such a way that traditional myths can't be swallowed anymore. Okay? The myths, he said, include archaic views of universe, presumption, the humans are at the center of existence, the stories of Jesus' resurrection, Moses bringing God's 10 Commandments down the mountain. Dispel the myths of religion, he said, and all we're left with is nihilism. All right, why? Well, you understand. We'll get this in Judaism. The stories, the events are historical, and they explain, all right, the Judeo-Christian ethic. We'll wrap it into that one just to bring everything together. But if you take history away, do you have Judaism? No, it is entirely built in historical events. And when God wanted to explain something to the people, all right, he wanted to explain that he was their provider. What did he give them? Manna. All right, where did it come from? Heaven. We could say he gave them meat and such on. All right. So he's saying these were all fantastic stories. They're just explanation, though. They didn't really happen. They're myths. All right. But if you take away the myths, all you're left with is meaninglessness. And he goes on to say, nihilism is not something that can be argued away. I assume it's true, but it is ultimately destructive. Here's a phrase. It's a monstrous truth. It's an absolute. If we're left to our own vices with no restraints, we will run to meaninglessness, or we will moved to meaninglessness, left to our own devices. Okay, we can't have that. The myth served as a framework for religious teachings that brought about man's betterment. Okay? Without their integration of cosmology, morality, of cosmic facts with idealism, people will deny fixed standards and do whatever they choose, splintering society, and we can't have that. So what do we need? Ooh, here's one for you. If they don't do that, they might embrace totalitarian option, which relies on government to force humans to behave. Like, you guys drink too much, therefore no more drinking carbonated sodas. You can only have a 12-ounce drink. You remember that one? All right. Or, you don't know how to treat yourself well, nutrition-wise, so we need, as the government, to limit your intake on things like pretzels. Why? Well, you don't know how to take care of yourselves. You need what? Actually, this is where Marx went with Marxism. We need Nietzsche actually builds it up, but we need a Superman to come in, lead us into the utopia, teach us how to live, and then once we're all better, they give up power and we all live happily ever after. That's the basic premise of Marxism. All right, we need something, right? And he goes on, he says, Rue, a church-going but skeptical Lutheran, suggests that we start all over and create a new myth. A noble lie that squares with what is known scientifically, something that is convincing, though it may not be factual. It does not have to be true. It just needs to be convincing so I can get you to come over here. Live like this. Stay in your... Oh, sorry. What would the lie be? It doesn't specify. It remains for the artists, the poets, the novelists, the musicians, the filmmakers, the tricksters, the masters of illusion to wench us towards our salvation by seducing us into an embrace with a noble lie. What's he telling you? What do we need? Is it happening? That's the big question. All right. And I guess you start to bring in other questions. What are you willing to give up? All right, in order to believe. Would you believe this? I could throw this whole thing right against our current pandemic. Are we being told the truth? Is there a lie involved? What's the purpose for the lie? Is it about the election? Is it about power? Is it about control? Why do I want you to stay in your house? Why do I want to limit people into big thing? Why do I not want to live it? Because we got people with different opinions all over the place about whatever is happening. Where's the truth? See, that's the importance of why we do what we're doing. Now, I don't want you to agree with me. I really don't. I would rather you argued with me. All right. The purpose in here is not for you to agree with me. It's for us to reach the idea of truth. Is there a truth? And work it way out. All right, that's the importance of going through something like this. All right, to take what you have, and here's the big thing, to tear it apart. If it doesn't go back together again, then you need to figure out why. And that's where those tests come in, the test of reality. Take something you believe and put it against reality. If it doesn't work in reality, you need to get rid of it. Why? Because you are putting yourself in danger. If you believe a lie, it will take you into what? A position of moral excellence, or depravity. We could go back here. Can everybody lie? We live in a society where it's okay for everybody to lie. Is that a problem? What does it lead to? So we have a standard that we throw in. It says, thou shalt not lie, right? And we look at it and go, oh, that's limiting to my autonomy. But which life do you want? That's the question you want. Do I want a life of chaos or do I want a life of, well, that's the importance of going down. We can open up I'm setting the stage with this. To open up and go into, which will start in religion, we'll start with Hinduism. All right, where did it come from? Why did it evolve the way it did? All right, is it the same today as it was when it was originated? We'll go into philosophy and we'll look at where this started. We'll go back and look at Plato and Socrates and what they were arguing for. Socrates dies for his principles. How many people do you know that would do that today? Well, probably a few. I know some people are but are they principles that are correlating with reality? Did he die for a principle that was worth dying for? How about freedom? How about liberty? How about, well, can you define them any way you want? Or do they have fundamental principles that support them? What is liberty? What is freedom? Because you got somebody like Patrick Henry going, give me liberty or give me death. What did he believe liberty was?
Right.
He argued it out, all right? Because we only mentioned the last line of his speech. He argues it out. 10 years we've argued with England, the king. What did he want? To be treated as, well, in his case, they wanted to be treated as gentlemen, property owners. What was the fundamental cry? Taxation without representation. When there's no representation, are you free? Are you even treated with value, integrity, human worth, intrinsic worth? These were all phrases that pop up right away. You know, in our Declaration of Independence, we argue it right away. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nobody promised you happiness, but you can pursue it. And we are created equal, meaning not the same, but from the fundamental position to which we can all have the same opportunity to pursue. What are we pursuing? And the word is contentment. Eudaimonium is actually the word to which Aristotle introduces to that. Happiness is the word contentment, meaning at rest, no longer striving. It's a very powerful position. That's why we start with worldview, and next week we'll jump into the directions. One philosophy, one religion. They're really actually the same, but with different driving, ideas. I'll see you next week.